I had a lot of hatred. I was bullied for that. I actually was bullied for being like the rich kid. So all my life, I had to kind of prove that I'm not, and being pretty, like on top of that, being blonde, pretty, blue eyes, like, oh my God, I was obviously, I had to prove all my life that I'm not just, pretty face. I'm not just this blonde, and I'm not just a wealthy.
Welcome back to another episode of Empower Her Money podcast. I'm your host, Angela Duncan. Today's episode, I get to interview Katya Stern. She's an internationally known best-selling author, entrepreneur, model, and she's going to talk today about money blocks. From her childhood, she grew up in a wealthy home internationally. We're going to talk about making decisions, imperfect actions, what does that mean, and of course, celebrating. Today's episode is sponsored by morewithangela.com, where we are bringing you double-digit passive income opportunities from the wealthy to you every day. Morewithangela.com. Check out the website, book a call directly with me, and I will help you on your passive income journey. Morewithangela.com. Hi, Katya. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast.
Hi, Angela. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here and share my wisdom on, with your amazing audience.
Yes, and you have quite a fascinating journey. So I would love for you to share with the audience kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Yes, it's a roller coaster, obviously, but that's how we get from now to wow. That's how I call my program. And that's basically what I help other people do, to go from whatever they are in life to the wowness, whatever that may be for you. For me, it's different on every stage of life. I'm known as the wow woman because I have a book that's called You Were Born Wow. So that's it's a little bit of a background. The book, the fitness competitions, the moving to Canada when I was 17, then living in Monte Carlo for 4 years on a 47, I think 48 meters yacht, huge yacht with 7 people serving me, and then losing it all and just going back to my small apartment with my 3-year-old daughter and my car keys and a statue of a bronze woman with wings. That's the wow woman that I had to become, I'd say.
Awesome. So you've traveled quite a bit. You've lived in different areas, but your fitness journey, that kind of started a little bit later in life. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, I was about to turn 40, and I remember getting up in the morning, going into the bathroom, and as I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, wow, who is that woman looking back at me? And it wasn't that, I was looking drastically, whatever, awful. But the interesting thing was that I knew I could do better. I knew I wasn't happy with what I had, even though this was in Monaco? I think it was in Monaco. I had this, closet full of designers' clothes, and everything was working for me. But inside, I had this, there was a gap between how I would want to be at 40 and then. And I started, at that time, I left my law career and started, looking for ways to become me again. It's an interesting process that a lot of women and actually men go through, like looking for themselves, for the reinvention. And that happened to me. I reinvented myself through fitness competitions. And at 42, I was on stage, practically naked. My body wasn't perfect. Like, I wasn't delusional, but I was on stage in California, in close to Hollywood. I felt like a star of my life. Finally, I was in charge. I was, I was shining, and that's how, it wasn't. Yes, it was a fitness competition, but it gave me so much strength, inner confidence, inner discipline. I mean, if I could do this, I could do anything. And
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah. So then being from originally from Moscow, right? And then moving to Canada and being in the US, we all have different customs and different ways of thinking about money. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned and perhaps some of your own money blocks that you've had to get through? I mean, from different cultures, I'm very interested to hear like what you've learned through the different, stages of your life.
Right. And thanks for the question, because thinking about Russia, people don't know a lot, especially those times. I mean, all we know is it was a communism and people were supposed to be like equal. Well, that wasn't my story. I was, I was stood out because I came from a wealthy family, whatever that is, by, by those standards, of course. Like my father had a Mercedes when all my people in school just walked to school, and their parents were pretty um, not wealthy. And obviously, I had a lot of hatred. I was bullied for that. I actually was bullied for being like the rich kid. So all my life, I had to kind of prove that I'm not, and being pretty, like on top of that, being blonde, pretty, blue eyes, like, oh my God, I was obviously, I had to prove all my life that I'm not just, pretty face. I'm not just this blonde, and I'm not just a wealthy, girl who's nothing basically. Because I was told that I was this guy, that he only likes me because my father had a Mercedes, and my father was a famous jeweler, and my grandfather was, anyways, it was by those standards I stood out. And that's why I had a lot of money blocks later on, because I kind of felt privileged, and maybe it was an unfair advantage. So I felt like I always had to hide that. And to this day, a lot of people who meet me, like, they don't, like, how do they know that I'm wealthy? But I don't, like, for me to show this off is a little bit cringy. Like I know, like, women show off their crocodile Birkin bags. Like I had it when I was 23, 24, and showing it off, like I have a collection of them. Like showing it off is a bit like, now these days I look at it and so I always had to do the opposite. And one of the money blocks that I realized only when I started doing my this mindset work, and I teach it now. I go into the subconscious and remove those blocks. And I did this practice myself. And what I remember, one of my fears about money came from my father brought this jar like this. I remember it's 3 liters jar full of full of black caviar. I was about 13. So we ate it, and we had an apartment, and we couldn't put it. I was the one to put it in garbage, but I couldn't go do it through the, how do you call this? The garbage disposal thing. So I put it, I didn't even put it in the back. I put it outside of my apartment door. Like it wasn't clean. It was sticky.
Yes.
So you can see it, but there was black caviar, which was very expensive, very rare. It's the full thing. My mom comes home, and I remember she's like, oh no, they're gonna kill us. They're gonna kill us. Who's gonna kill us? So that second, I connected that having money is dangerous. That they're gonna see the poor people. They're gonna see us having this, having money, having this, and I connected being wealthy to, to being killed. So there was a danger. And oh my God, I just realized it like 2 years ago when started 3 years ago when I started doing this kind of work. I'm like, oh my God, I lived with this, that money means danger. That's why I never really allowed myself to build the big business, because money means danger. And living with this idea that money means danger is, I don't know, maybe it's generational. Well, a lot of things are. um, the add-on on this was that my father's store, the jewelry store, the jewelry business was taken away from him in the 98. So we lost the building that was supposed to be my inheritance. The building on Arbat Street, it's like probably now worth, I don't know, about 5 million, I'd say.
Hmm.
They lost the business, and he died like 5 years later.
Hmm.
So all of those things, like, they add up. So yeah, I have a very I know if I ever think of what's been stopping me from making it really big, it's this. It's all of those childhood beliefs and childhood stories that obviously are in us and in all of us.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that story because I think a lot of people think of money blocks from kids who come from poverty. But you were on the other end of the spectrum and kind of you had money, but you still connected some blocks with it, some negative things about having money. And so that contrast to like my childhood was poverty. So we
Mhm.
kind of both were bullied and struggled in fear based around money, but for different reasons. So I really like that perspective. And so you
People
talked
get
about
bullied in any ways. Children do. I have a client who is very wealthy. She went through a very, very similar situation all her life. Now she's doing like her PhD in psychology and this, and she's working and she's an athlete. She has to overcompensate for her being just a rich kid. So yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about writing a book and you do help clients. Let's talk about some key things that perhaps you teach them when it comes to, themselves, business. And I know that, we talked offline a little bit, but some of those key items that you're teaching them, let's dive into that. So one of the ones I liked that you mentioned is the concept of making a decision. And so talk a little bit more about what you teach.
Yes, it's one of the most important parts, as is actually before that goes comes or goes figuring out what you want, which is pretty also very difficult. Once you do, it's making firm decision without knowing how you're going to get there. That's very important, because when people make decisions, we all want to know the how, right? And what if it doesn't happen, and all this. Like, we protect ourselves from failure, which doesn't really exist, because it's just another experience and growth. But once you make a decision, you focus on your result, on your journey, on your, in an instruments, the house, they somehow they come. I don't know how it works, but that's how I'm in a real estate investment. This is my like main source of income, is reconstruction investment. And I remember one of my first real estates, I was like, I'm gonna be living here with an intent to sell it later. And that was like 5 years before the building was built. And I did it 3 times. I had this decision without knowing. And if I would consciously start thinking about it, how am I going to buy this? How am I going to invest? Where am I going to get the money to invest in the renovations and stuff? No, I just made a decision that was very firm. And later on, I would even sometimes forget about that decision, but it was just it would get into my subconscious, and then yeah, the mints would come. That's how I moved to Monaco at one point in my life, without any reasons, without any instruments, just because I made a decision. I came to It's another funny story. I made a decision to move to Monaco. I came to Monaco. I talk about this in my book. I come to Monaco. I had $60,000 that somehow I made. That was like 23. And I came with $60,000 to Monte Carlo. Like, that's that's funny. And then I think, okay, what would a Monegasque person do to like make this my city? I'm thinking, okay, I was young and smart, I'd say. And I'm thinking, okay, Monegasque would have an iron and an ironing board. I go to the store, I can buy the iron. And then, I didn't have an apartment. I didn't have anything, but it was like the anchor. I'm now Monegasque. So I left because they didn't have an apartment that I was looking for. I was looking for like a small apartment, but in a nice area so that I could later find a job, get my papers, whatever. I don't know what I was thinking. But, is it a miracle? Is it an intentions? Is that the making of that decision? But when I returned back to Moscow to wait for that apartment to come up, my real estate agent was looking for it. I met a guy. He lives in Monte Carlo, has an iron, Ferrari, and a lot of other nice things. And now we have a daughter.
So you asked the universe for the iron and they delivered it to you with a man.
Exactly. I asked because I made a decision. I didn't care how it would come around, through what. And then I thought, okay, I will anchor this to, in my mind that, okay, if I'm moving in, I gotta go get my, stuff together. And it did start with an iron, believe it or not.
Yeah. So something else that you talk about too is imperfect actions. Tell me what that means.
Most of us smart women have been, investing ourselves in education, in learning, in growing, which is great. But the thing is, we have this, it's called the imposter syndrome, that we have to be perfect, right? And that's, of course, if we talk about it, comes from our childhood. There was a parent, in my case, it was my father, who always wanted me to be better, of course, out of love. And he was sometimes too strict and too pushy and too, caring. So I will always hear this, okay, you can do better, you can do better, you can do better. And we all can. But it doesn't really work like this, because we can, all our lives, we can wait till we get better and better and better and better, which is really, it's an endless journey to get better. So my idea, instead of like becoming that best version of yourself, is accept that you are your best version today. It is what it is, and go do what you want to do. And then once you do it and perfectly perfect, then you get your feedback from other people, from yourself, from the recording, from everything else. And then you make it better next time, or different, I'd say. Because we don't know what's better. It's better. It's very, who do you compare it to? Better for you, to your satisfaction, to your pleasure, to your own results, not anybody else. So that's the thing. And today is perfect. This is a perfect day to start whatever, and then you get to your, BCD on your journey. But start with point A, and it's important to realize that point is really now to get to your wow. It has to be now, today. And when I did, I still do teach like health and wellness as a fitness competitor, but I remember when I was doing it really heavily, my clients would start with, okay, so if I do a cardio, what is it? An hour? What is it? 2 hours? How many times a week? Do you have good running shoes? No, I don't. Go buy yourself running shoes, and then take a step further. And then we talk about starting. How many minutes do you run? I'm not a big fan of running, but whatever, walk, any cardio. I don't know, 10 minutes. Okay, do 12 today. Tomorrow you do 14. That's how you get to your, but if you want to do an hour today, that's not going to happen. And that's what a lot of people stop themselves from really achieving what they want by, because, I can't do an hour, then I'm not going to do it. And I did in my fitness competition, I did mention it before, I wasn't perfect. I know that. But that whole thing, that day, April 8th, 9th, 2016, changed my whole life. What I do, who I am, because I allowed myself to be that imperfect woman on stage. But I was there. And people who were judging me, by the way, because a lot of people, women and men, afraid of judgment. Well, you're on stage, you're on Hollywood, you're the star of your life. And those people, the judges, they're on their couch doing nothing and just eating their chips. That's the difference. Only if people would understand this, because only those who don't do anything in this particular field can criticize you. People, the fitness people who were on stage, they would be very supportive, obviously, because they know what it is. And it's in making money, it's the same thing. People who make money, people who've been through ups and downs, people who know anything about money, they will support you. But those who just, she's doing this again, they're not doing much. Of course, it's easier to be on the sideline instead of, being actively involved in anything you do.
Right. So we've talked about making a decision, about taking action, even if it's imperfect. What about when you do implement and, you have an outcome, whether the outcome is what you wanted or perhaps it wasn't what you wanted? Do we celebrate everything? What is your approach to that?
Oh, I'm a big fan of celebrations. I think, well, first of all, people are not celebrated enough, again, because we're not used to, our parents didn't celebrate us because our parents wanted us to be better and more. And there's I'm gonna say wrong, but there's an idea that if we, if we applaud our children too much, if we praise them, if we can give them the satisfaction of thinking that, they have achieved everything, they will stop, which is not true. Obviously, there has to be a little bit of a balance, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But overall, we all grew up with this nagging voice, and now we think it's our voice. We think it's me being myself up, when in reality, most of the time it's coming from the parents, from the teachers, from brother, whoever, but somebody else. It's not really, my voice that's telling me that there's something wrong with you. So I think to add a little bit of celebration with, with everything. I did this. I bought those running shoes. Okay, great. Isn't this great? So every time you get celebrated, your self-esteem goes a little bit up, and then a little bit more. That's how we become more self-confident. Not because we all of a sudden does this whole thing and here I am on stage on the Olympic champion. No, we get celebrated every day by actually getting up and doing things.
Yeah. And I believe that too. Even small things, big things, even if the outcome was not what you thought or wanted, still celebrate it because we've learned something by taking that action.
Right, because with that outcome, we sometimes are looking for the outcome that we think is good for us, but we're so delusional. We don't really truly know 100% what's better for us. How many times you think it's a failure when usually it's in relationship, right? You lose this guy and you're like, oh my God, my life's over. I'm such a failure. He dumped me. It happened to me. Oh my God, I was. And then 6 months later, another guy who was like, wow. And then I'm like, oh, what if it did happen with that guy? So we don't really know what is the best outcome for us. So just being grateful for whatever and being grateful to would, in my zone of control, I did my part of, achieving on my actions 100, doesn't really have to be 100%. Whatever percent was possible to do, then you're good. You can be celebrated. The outcome, sometimes it's not really up to me. There are a lot of factors involved. So you're celebrating your part of, your responsibility and how well you've done your part of the job.
Yeah, I like that too. All right, Katya, I have a fun question for you. If you could have a superpower or super talent that you don't currently have, what would it be and why?
I think those superpowers, they come and go depending on the particular time and desires. Right now, for me, it's letting go of a lot of things, because very often I keep going back into the past and trying to change it, which is not possible, obviously. And as a smart and sane person, I understand it's not possible, but still, we oftentimes, especially when there's and I do talk a lot about this, about some shame or some guilt that even towards myself. And in this particular time, it's, I made, again, the wrong decision. It was, something had to do with money, and I lost a lot of money because of trust. And anyways, so I'm kind of, at this point of time, I'm like, I wish I could just let it go, because past is past. You can't change it. And a lot of us are living in the past. And I try not to do that, but it was something big. And that's why I'm feeling how it still influences my life, not in the best way. Even though I understand that was my lesson and blah, 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 of course. And I'm going to know about this, about the benefits of this later on in life. I'm already feeling, because of this, I sold my other property because I needed some cash, and I invested in something else, and it's doing really well. So maybe I will even benefit from that, but we don't know that yet. So going back to your question, letting go of that, whatever's not serving you at this particular point of life.
Yeah. That's a great answer. All right, Katya, if our audience wants to follow you, find you, learn more about what you are doing, what's the best way for them to find you?
Start with buying the book, because that's this storytelling is also always the best way of introducing us to each other. So I actually have it here. It's You Were Born Wow, Amazon. And I think that's the best way of learning my story and becoming not even motivated, inspired. I would want people to be inspired, because you can be wow if you choose to, if you make that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on Empower Her Money podcast.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It was fun.
Thank you so much for tuning into Empower Her Money podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, and leave a review wherever you are tuning in.